Good evening and a very warm welcome to First Issues. Working professionals from across all industries are being struck down in the prime of their lives by a condition that can sap you of your energy, rob you of your focus, and requires moment-to-moment monitoring to stop you from succumbing to it completely. Consider for a minute the loss in productivity due to sick leave for the companies and organizations affected. Hospital beds at maximum capacity as public health institutions struggle to cater for the ill. And national coffers strained in mitigating the multifaceted fallout. Just as silently and destructively as it creeps through the human body, impairing vision, weakening the heart, shutting down your kidneys, pancreas, reproductive organs, and all the way to closing down the nerves in your legs and feet, it is making its way across the entire world and threatening to cripple economies. We are talking about none other than the non-communicable disease brought about by lifestyle and diet changes in the past few decades, that is type 2 diabetes. The spread of which some medical professionals have described as being an explosion.
Africa is said to have an explosion in type 2 diabetes, and the trouble with type 2 diabetes, unlike malaria or bilharzia or whatever it is, which have a finite treatment, you can take a course of antibiotics, you can take an anti-malarial. Diabetes is a lifelong condition.
What is frustrating to those in the know is that this growing pandemic is largely preventable. Yet the number of lives cut down from the working force that governments have fought long and hard to cultivate continues to grow at an alarming rate. But what exactly is diabetes? Our first stop is to Professor Kiran Bhagat's practice in village Gaborone.
The body consumes sugar, and we need sugar in some form for production of energy. And that process by which the sugar is broken down and enters into the bloodstream is by a chemical. It's almost like a lock and key. If a door is locked, the key that opens the door is what we call insulin. Insulin is a chemical that the body produces in an organ called the pancreas, which sits quite close to the liver. And the pancreas is involved very tightly in the regulation of insulin, which opens the door, which allows the sugar to go into the tissues to provide energy. Now, the trouble is that we are no longer living out in as cave people. You know, we don't go and hunt our food. Our food is found in the kitchen. Our food is found in the fridge. So when you're hungry, you go and open the fridge. That's not how we have evolved over millions and millions of years. We have evolved, for example, that we ate berries when berries were in season. And so you got your sugar during that time. When the fruit was out of season, you didn't have any sugar. So the body has what we call a thrifty gene. In other words, if the body senses that you are eating a lot of sugar, it thinks, I better keep this sugar because I don't know when I'm next going to have sugar. And what we see, for example, is this type of figure, where what you're seeing is an increasing abdominal girth. In other words, your waist circumference is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And we now know that the risk of diabetes is directly related to your abdominal circumference. And a simple measure for those that are listening to the program is to measure your waist circumference. If as a woman, your waist circumference is more than 80 centimeters, and if as a man your waist circumference is more than 90 centimeters, you are in big trouble in terms of your future risk of diabetes. Because it's telling you that the body is packaging the sugar that you're consuming. And it's sugar, it's not fat. It's the sugar that we're consuming that is being converted into fat. Because the insulin is what we call a growth hormone. It makes things grow. In diabetics that inject themselves with insulin, wherever they inject themselves, you'll see growth of tissue because it's a growth hormone. So it makes this. And what we've discovered with diabetes is that the fat around the abdomen is the most poisonous. It's different to the fat you have around your arms or the fat you have around your buttocks, because the fat around the abdomen is producing chemicals that we call cytokines. These are highly inflammatory. They're flammable chemicals that put the body on fire. And we know that virtually every chronic disease that we suffer from, whether it's Alzheimer's or dementia, whether it's heart disease, whether it's diabetes, whether it's Parkinson's disease, all have their basis in inflammation. So this part of the abdomen is producing chemicals that put the body on fire, and it inflames everything. So many of the complications of diabetes are because of inflammation of the brain. We know that diabetics are multiple-fold higher at risk of developing dementia because the sugar gets into the brain and poisons the brain. We know that sugar poisons the heart and causes heart disease. We know that sugar poisons the circulation and causes people to have amputation. The commonest cause of amputation worldwide is not car accidents, it's diabetes, because they're losing their limbs. So many of the complications which we'll talk about in diabetes are as a result of an overload of sugar, and the body is not able to cope in terms of disposing of that sugar. And so that's type 2 diabetes, which is on the epidemic rise. Type 1 diabetes is where often occurs in children, which is a completely different condition and has not risen substantially in the last 2 or 3 centuries. And it is a condition where the pancreas dies as a result of a viral infection or the body has attacked itself. And it is a condition where from the onset children need to take insulin. They need to inject the insulin because they have no insulin. Very soon, with stem cell therapy and recent advances in medicine, there will be a cure for type 1 diabetes, pancreatic transplants, and all sorts of things. Whereas type 2 diabetes, which is the one we're concerned about, is the lifestyle condition that we're talking about that we've imposed upon ourselves.
How does Africa compare? What are the statistics with regards to Africa specifically and this endemic rise of diabetes?
The most recent statistics come out of the World Health Organization, WHO. And unfortunately, with many other conditions on our continent, we have not been able over the last 2 or 3 decades to gather sufficient information about sub-Saharan Africa or SADC for us to be definitive about what's going on. But if we take the Africa statistics, Africa is set over the next 15 years to double its population of diabetics. That is a 50% increase in diabetes on the continent of Africa. And wherever we look in Africa, we're seeing it. I mean, you know, if we look at, and the reason we talked about is obesity. And if we know, for example, that statistics coming out of Johannesburg, the city of Johannesburg, about 2 or 3 years ago, published statistics on black women in Johannesburg. The incidence of obesity in black women has risen such that 45% of black women in Johannesburg are overweight. Now, we don't live very far from there, and we probably eat the same junk. You know, we just have to ride our roads to see all the billboard signs beckoning you to eat pizza and to eat, you know, so-called freshly grilled chicken and all these adverts that tell you that they're healthy. It's all a load of nonsense. And what we're eating is highly industrialized, highly processed, sugar-laden foods. And as a result, the obesity epidemic is set to rise. And as a result of the obesity, Africa is set to be challenged. Because we know on our continent and in our country that urbanization is on the rise. People are moving from the cattle post to the car. And they're forgetting to exercise, they're eating more, we're sitting more, we sit and we eat, we sit and we drive, we sit and we work, we sit and we watch television. So we've become a sedentary culture. We as animals are never supposed to be sitting, we're supposed to be walking, which is why the incidence of back disease and all these other problems are also rising, because we're not supposed to be sitting. So Africa is set to have an explosion in type 2 diabetes, and the trouble with type 2 diabetes, unlike malaria or bilharzia or whatever it is, which have a finite treatment. You can take a course of antibiotics, you can take an anti-malarial. Diabetes is a lifelong condition. And so it's said to have so many complications that we as a continent have, certainly in Botswana, we have a double burden where we have HIV, but under the HIV, we're having all these chronic diseases, diabetes, blood pressure, stroke, cancer. So we're having people now having 2 sets of diseases, one which they've conquered. You know, we've been very successful in the management of HIV and AIDS, but we have this double-decker bus which we're riding, which is set to explode.
In the coming weeks, we shall delve deeper into the costs of this growing pandemic. Physical and emotional pain, fear, frustration. We hear it from those who know what it is to develop and live with type 2 diabetes, as we sound the alarm on a situation that we feel all should be made aware of and educated on.
Sukiri mokgwa yone nna ha ke ne ke na le thata ke ne ke rata ya ramisiwa go gaisa bolwetse bo barna ba se ga jaya bolwetse bo is nothing, it's nothing, because how follow the instructions go tla siama. Eno sukiri, you never know what to do. O dira se o molato ga o dire se o molato kgome ya mošate.
I feel regrets that I haven't taken care of myself, because every time I fall sick, I feel that if this is what it was going to be, I wish somebody could have told me and warned me against it.
Our culture was that eating nice food was the best thing in the world. We thought when you eat food that is not very nice, it's because you can't afford the nice food.
For now, Business Basics is up next. Stay tuned for more First Issues.
What is the future of help? It's to help people find the great in themselves. The drive, the passion. Help them find their true potential. Help them stretch. Help them grow. That's why we help people help themselves, help the world, because a little help goes a long, long way. FNB, how can we help you?
It is time for Business Basics. Despite their increasingly valuable role within the economy, SMEs remain significantly high risk. Therefore, it is increasingly important to have a good plan, one that shows the viability and sustainability of your business idea to secure that all-important financing. Once you have effectively assessed your market and your competition, you can now craft your competitive strategy. Concepts such as customer purchasing criteria and key success factors will help you map out a winning plan.
Now that you have given the microeconomic background of your business in the background, you have touched on the market, the prospect of the market, how big the market is, what is likely to happen in the future. Will it grow? Will it regress? You've looked at competition. Now you need to take your business. Where do you fit? You need to fit your business into this context. Where do you fit now? And how do you stack up against competition? All the things that we looked at, how do you compare yourself in terms of scale of 1 to 10? Are you really ranking? And out of that, you then have to come up with a strategy. So you determine what you call competitive positioning, to really say, and under the competitive positioning, there are two elements that you look at. You look at what you call the CPCs, the consumer purchasing criteria. When a customer comes to buy a product or service, what exactly are they looking for? So you list them and then weigh yourself against them to really say they look for 1, 2, 3, 4 and rank them in order of importance. I'll give an example. If you are buying a car, what are you looking for? I want a motor plan, I want warranty, I want this and that, I want this and that. If you are buying another service, are you looking, is the after service that is important? Is the price important? Is the quality important? So you need to list all the things, the factors that a customer looks for when they buy a service. The second component that you need to look at is the key success factors. What do you and the people in that industry ought to have in order to serve the customers and to meet their expectations? I'll give you an example. If people are looking for the warranty, perhaps I need to have a plan as well with my major suppliers of that particular service to really say they can extend the warranty to their customer. If we are looking for after-sales service, I probably need to have a team that can actually follow up with the customers, visit customers on site to actually see how they are doing with how do they find the service and the product, or even have a call center where people can actually call in to report, and we have a team that can actually be on the ground to go and service those customers. So again, on a scale of 1 to 10, rank them to really say which one is the most important, and then compare yourself. How do you compare to competition? So if there are 4 of us, who has these capabilities in place? So I would say competitor A is actually 8 out of 10 of these factors. I'm on 5. So I've got 3 blocks there, which means they will be sitting above me. I probably need to make investment to catch up or to be considered the same. So yes, those are the 2 main factors that you need to look at. And when you come down to strategy now as you compare them and really say, which one would I prioritize? Where do I want to see myself? Okay, I'm currently ranking 1 on these 3 most important factors. Where do I want to be in the next 3 years? And the other component is, will these continue to be the same factor that customers look for into the future? Will these key success factors be the same thing that I need to have for me to be competitive? How are they likely to change in the future? So much that when you make investment today, I invest in a particular system, in a particular software, in a particular skill, I know I will derive value into the next couple of years. So it's very important that then we bring it all together, and then you determine exactly how you actually position yourself. I think the best way to determine is to ask the people themselves. Don't assume. Don't sit here and assume that what you're thinking is actually the true needs of a customer. So you definitely have to sit with these customers, ask them questions. If you can pull them into a forum, ask them questions. If you can find some students, make a questionnaire, let them distribute to a particular segment of the market, so much that you can come back and really say, based on these assumptions, based on this feedback that you've gotten from a customer, we can then project that the rest of the market would have the same needs as well. And I need to mention this is one big mistake that most entrepreneurs do. They develop products and services for themselves. So they will build up a business to address what he thinks or she thinks is a problem without going to the market, and they forget that they're actually selling to the people. So we fail to ascertain the actual needs by asking. So yes, it's very important to go to the market, ask the people, come back and make those assumptions. Even when you go to market, sometimes it's even because, and I must mention that sometimes you can actually assume the market research might be 60% true, 70% true, depending on the size of the sample size. And most of the SMEs don't have the money to do a fully fledged research. So they'll take a small sample. So what I would advise people to do is that once you've made assumption, test first. Produce, just go outsource a little production, bring those products, test them to the market, see the uptake, be able to correct so much that if it's a production of a particular product, say right now, I'm coming up with a facial product for women, and I've made a study of about 50 women, and 90% of the 40 or 50 women say, yes, that's a good product, we're looking for it. I go outsource production elsewhere, I test it again to the rest of the market, to the few people that I can actually sell it to, and their thumbs up, I increase at the scale where I feel now this is really a good representation of the market. I can really say it's about time I make investment in terms of buying my own equipment, setting up my own production, resourcing by bringing the people on board, and really going above board in terms of marketing.
What is the future of help? It's to help people find the great in themselves. The drive, the passion. Help them find their true potential. Help them stretch. Help them grow. That's why we help people help themselves, help the world, because a little help goes a long, long way. FNB, how can we help you?
Welcome back to the show. In our stock exchange segment tonight, we discuss some important instruments that help you assess how your investments on the stock market are most likely to perform.
When you talk about indicators that we use for performance, there are things that we call indices. Indices generally gauge the overall movement in share prices on the market. And on the BSE specifically, we have the DCI and the FCI as the main indices that we normally publish. DCI stands for Domestic Company Index, and FCI stands for Foreign Companies Index. As the name suggests, the DCI measures the overall daily price movements of shares of domestic companies, whereas the FCI tracks the overall movement in share prices on a daily basis of foreign companies. The size of the market can be looked at in relation to the size of our GDP, or the domestic product of the country, in which case the indicator that we use is the market capitalization over GDP. The importance of this indicator is that it gives you a good indication of the relative size of listed companies compared to the value of all goods and services produced within the borders of the country. Another indicator that we use with relation to liquidity of the market, or the trading activity of the market, we normally speak about the average daily turnover, which simply says on a daily basis how much of the value of listed companies is being traded. We also speak of the liquidity ratio, or turnover velocity, which gives you an indication of the extent to which the value of listed companies is being traded on a daily basis. Primarily, we use three indicators for relative valuation purposes. This is the price to earnings ratio, the P ratio, the price to book ratio, and also the dividend yield.
Of these indicators, which does Kopanobolokwe advise a newcomer to the exchange or a layperson to familiarize themselves with first to get a better understanding of the market?
A good number of them are quite useful to a layman or an investor. For example, when you talk about a dividend yield, which gives you an idea of the percentage income return you are earning from the dividends declared by the company, you can actually use that to compare it with interest rates that you'd be earning from your deposits in a bank. Because it's a percentage, interest rate is also a percentage, you'll be able to say, if I invest over a period of 1 year and the company pays a dividend of so much, giving me a dividend yield of so much, how does it fare with the interest rates that are being paid for my deposits at a commercial bank? But also, one other important thing is the liquidity ratio. Investors want a market which is very liquid, where there's trade activity every day. So if I'm able to get a good understanding of the level of activity by looking at how much shares are being traded every day, then you'll be able to make a good investment decision as to whether there's a good and deep and liquid market to put your shares into. At a higher level, the market cap to GDP ratio just simply shows to you the importance or the relative value of the exchange compared to the economy. For example, domestic companies relative to Botswana economy is around about 30%, but the total companies relative to Botswana economy is around about, it's more than 3 times. So what it says to you is that a substantial amount of value in terms of businesses is being created through the stock exchange. That's the type of interpretation you would want to gather from your participation in the stock market.